And we are live. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Nicholas Downey from the Inner Circle Games Network, and welcome to. I guess technically this is the second episode, but we'll call it the first episode of Let's Talk Games. So what this is going to be me and someone else. It's Sam for this episode, and we're going to talk about various games we're playing and things we enjoy, and answer questions about your most recent releases. So I'll give Sam a quick little introduction. Sam?
Hey guys, how's it going? Hope everyone has been doing well. I am very, very eager to talk about this game. We have something very special today.
For sure. So for people that don't know, Metro Exodus released a week ago now. It's made by the great developers over at 4A Games and published by Deep Silver. And it released to quite decent critical reception compared to everything else that has released this month.
God, right.
this month's brutal. This is like
it's been pretty bad. It's been pretty bad. We'll talk in depth about that on the podcast tomorrow, obviously. But Metro, critically speaking, Metro is the survivor of February. There's no question about that.
And I want to say this first. I was the one that called this. I said back last year that Metro Exodus would be the best reviewed game in February.
Mm-hmm. And I agreed with you.
So the basic thing I want to ask is general thoughts in regards to Metro Exodus in comparison to its predecessors. Like, how does the game stack up mechanically? Is there anything outrageously new that came with Metro Exodus versus Last Light and Metro 2033? Because I know some people have played those games, some people haven't. What are some of the key changes that this game brought? Because I know you've been a longtime fan of the series.
That's right. I have been a longtime fan. Metro Exodus, you recall, was actually my most anticipated game of this year. Entirely. It even beat out Gears 5, which is crazy for me personally. So the main thing, there are some big changes that this game has brought. There's a lot of small changes, but the biggest one is the environments. Prior games, and I love the prior Metro games, but they're very, very linear. You know what I mean? It's, okay, you can go into this building, and yeah, you can explore in this room to the side, or yeah, there's a small alleyway down here, you can go there. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's mostly in the metros. And when you're not in the metros, you're above ground, so you're limited on filters, and you really need to skedaddle and get on out of there, or you're going to suffocate and die. Here, though, there's multiple open environments. It's not true open world. I wouldn't go so far as to say open world, but there are several big areas you get to explore, to the point where some of them you can even take a boat and paddle around to different ice flows, or, you know, small little sandbars, things like that. They even give you a map to keep track of where you're at. Like, that's how big it's gotten. So that's a huge difference, because it completely changes the context of the gameplay. Now, the guns and stuff, it's not like, oh, well, there's going to be a merchant 2 levels from now or something. I'll just hold on to this until there. It's like, okay, I need to customize my guns. I'm in the middle of a big island. There's mutant shrimp things all around me. What kind of guns do I need? What do I need to customize here? And so that's a really big difference, you know? You know what I mean? Like that, it completely changes the flow of everything. It gives you these long, somber moments that you can just pause and look in the environment and look how gorgeous it is. And boy, it is gorgeous. Yeah, so there's other changes I can talk about in depth if you want, but the biggest one by far is just how big the game is. Just
so in comparable size, so it's more of a hub style world. I use the term hub style very loosely because it's that in between of linear and open world. So similar in terms of maybe Rise of the Tomb Raider, God of War, maybe.
Yeah. I think a good comparison would probably be Rise of the Tomb Raider. I think Rise of the Tomb Raider is probably the most direct comparison when I think about it, because the first one's a little too linear. But that's actually, you know what? That's actually the perfect explanation. Is this game is to the other ones what Rise of the Tomb Raider is to the 2013 Tomb Raider. It's still functioning the same way, you know, same engine and all that, just visually upgraded. But the area you can explore is much more open.
I want to talk a little bit about the engine because this game, correct me if I'm wrong, runs on the same engine that 2033 and Last Light has.
Yes, it's the 4A engine. It's 4A Games proprietary tech.
The engine is absolutely stunning, and this is one of the first games that's come out in recent memories that I can remember that the game actually looks more impressive on my console than it did in trailers, and the trailers were no joke.
Dude, this is the first time I can think of it, not in a long time, I would say in ever. This is the first time I can ever think of that this game looks better playing it right now than it does at the E3 trailers. I've gone back and made several comparisons. It looks better now. I've shared some screenshots, some clips. One of those clips went viral. I got like several thousand views on it. It was crazy. And they still don't do the game any justice because the HDR isn't coming through. You know what I mean? Twitter completely compresses and destroys on the HDR. And it's like it's so bright and the darks are so dark and it's so vivid. It's stunning. I took over 100 screenshots when I was playing. And the fact that 4A was able to make the environments so much bigger and have more enemies on screen, but the engine still doesn't buckle and still holds up pretty darn well, that's insane to me. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, just the sheer amount of detail, especially when you look at the mutants and the variants of mutants as well. Um, Especially when you compare them because you deal with some of the mutants that you dealt with in the earlier games. And I dabbled in Metro 2033 and Last Light a bit before Metro Exodus came out, just so I had a feel for it. And seeing that progression, like 2033 to Last Light was a jump. And then like from Last Light to Exodus is like insane. It's absolutely insane, the jump in like graphical fidelity, attention to detail, everything. It's just an absolutely mind-blowing engine they run off of. It very much feels similar in terms of what it can accomplish to like something like id Tech almost.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I'm very interested because id Tech is another, right, with Rage 2 coming up in May, and that's going to be a shooter that's much more open than its predecessor was. So I'm very, very interested in seeing how something like that stacks up.
Well, actually, you won't see it with Rage 2 because I believe Rage 2 actually isn't made in id Tech. So it's actually proprietary. It uses it uses the Just Cause engine instead.
Oh,
It's
so that's
actually
running on Avalanche engine, actually, done in that
yeah,
case.
Rage 2 actually runs on
Okay.
Avalanche. I think the true test for id Tech will be Doom Eternal.
That's
by
fair.
a long shot.
That's
But
fair.
getting back to Metro Exodus, I want to talk about the train.
Okay.
Because the train is such a focal point. And I don't know if it's the setting and everything else, but it blended everything together. Like every design choice in this game felt very intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And there's never anything that feels jarring and out of place, which is something I can't say for a lot of post-apocalyptic games. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely understand what you mean. It allows for calm moments, but it doesn't feel jarring. It feels natural in doing so.
Yeah, and I think the calm moments stand out more to me, especially in terms of interactions with Anna specifically. And we'll dive more into that in terms of character development and everything else. How did you find the shooting mechanics? Because a few reviewers cited saying that the shooting mechanics were sludgy, weighted, and slow. How did you find them?
They're definitely weighted, even slow in certain ways, but I don't think they're sludgy, and I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I mentioned this in my review, which is coming out tomorrow, but yes, a hallmark staple of this series is that the gunplay feels solid, but it feels like it has a heft to it. You know, like you feel in your controller that you are lugging these heavy guns and this heavy gear around. And that's the point. The idea is, hey, if I take this heavier gun, it'll do better, but it's also going to slow me down more. I'm not going to be able to sprint as much. And with the weapon customization system, which is a topic in and up to itself, by the way, you can choose, okay, I can add a long barrel and a heavy stock to this gun and a scope, and it'll be way more stable, do more damage, and I'll be able to headshot guys from a distance. Oh, but if I have to sprint, I'm going to be like half as slow again. And it's going to take a long time for me to pull the gun out in comparison to just quick drawing it when it was a lighter frame. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense? To like, yes, there's absolutely a weight to it, but once you get used to it, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think the gunplay is fine. You feel these guns. They scream, they whine, they overheat. You have to clear the jam sometimes from the, it's like, that's okay. That's the idea.
Yeah, no, I find with, and this isn't pinpoint at specific reviewers or anything like that. I find people in general, there seems to be this divide on what gunplay mechanics feel good. And games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Metro Exodus seems to be getting some flack for it. Anyone that tries to add any form of weight to the weapons seems to get flack for not having super arcadey controls.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I can't agree with that. This isn't Destiny. This isn't Call of Duty. This isn't even Battlefield or Halo. Like, this puts the survival in survival horror. It's supposed to feel weighty and tense.
Well,
like
and that was the key memory that stuck out to me about the Metro series when I first started playing Metro 2033, where it literally tells you, it's like in the difficulty screen, it's like, select this difficulty if you want a more FPS focused experience, and then select this difficulty if you want a more survival horror experience. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, something I think a lot of people missed, they actually have a just the story mode. There is a difficulty mode where it says, look, if you don't want to worry about crafting, if you're scared of resources and running out of bullets, and you just want to experience Artyom's journey, you can do that. You can just select a difficulty mode where it's like, yeah, I don't want to bother with that. I just want to play the story. That's okay. Accessibility in games is a good thing.
Absolutely. And accessibility in games literally harms no one. So there's no excuse that more games shouldn't have this.
Ranger mode is still intact and it's still brutal. It's still there. It's okay.
Yeah, I started my first playthrough because I'm pretty determined I'm going to get 100% of the achievements in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I started on Ranger. Whew. You learn quick. You learn quick. Especially in stealth sections. You learn really quick. Those AI get really smart really fast.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the stealth dynamic.
Okay.
Because, like I said, I'll be 100% transparent. I've only played about 3 to 4 hours. So my knowledge is a little limited, but in the process, and this is not really spoilers, because if you watch the trailer, you know you get a train. In the process of stealing the train, right. They toy around with the stealth mechanics just a little bit. They give you a couple of, not 4 stealth sections. You can shoot through guns blazing, but stealth is the more optimal range. How do you find the stealth mechanics in this game?
I find them vastly refined. 2033 had the roughest stealth mechanics by far. Last Light brought a lot of quality of life updates. Some of those were incorporated in 2033 Redux, others weren't, but it still wasn't quite perfect. Here, I think the stealth is at its best because there's always another option if you want to be stealthy, but you can also just go in guns blazing if you prepared appropriately. It's okay. And so, you've got tools like throwing knives that you can craft. Another addition, I think this really helps the stealth out, is the little cans that you can throw. You can craft those now. You can craft the cans and cause a clatter and make a distraction to lure an enemy away or get the attention of a group of guards or mutants or whatever. And so that really, really helps things out because it's like if it gets really tense, dude. If you've only got one shotgun shell left and a horde of mutants hasn't noticed your location and they're feasting on some corpses right away from you, it's like, please don't notice me. Please don't notice me. Please don't notice me. You know what I mean? And then another addition to the gameplay that I have to talk about here is the addition of the day-night cycle. Unlike the previous games where the darkness or light was kind of up to the environment, and that's what that was, and you don't have a say in it. You can now choose to wait. Like, okay, I don't want to deal with that group of bandits patrolling. I'll sneak up on them at night because it'll be easier to deal with then. I'm just going to set my alarm, take a swig of vodka, and I'll go to sleep. Weather passes, night falls, you go out again. But the catch is more dangerous mutants come out at night that you might not have otherwise run into. So it becomes this issue of how do I want to balance the stealth with fighting mutants versus fighting humans versus being seen here versus not. It's really well done. I think this is the first one of the series that actually nails the stealth gameplay. Because in the past, it definitely felt a little awkward sometimes, stealthing your way through the tunnels of the metro. Again, the more open environments really help things out.
Yeah, for sure. And as anyone who follows me know, I'm a bit of a stealth snob, so to speak. And one of my favorite moments of this game was, since I was so new to the series, I wasn't familiar with the inventory system.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to throw a knife at a guy, but I just recently picked up cans. So I stood behind this guy. I was like 10 feet away. I was like, I've got this. Press down, throw, hit the guy in the back of the head with a tin can. And he goes, wow, what the hell was that? I'm like, oh, reload that save. We need to redo that one. But no, I found the stealth mechanics were very intuitive, and it's very hard with there being small exceptions, of course, to do stealth from a first-person perspective and have it work. Mm-hmm. Credit to games like Dishonored, who do it absolutely flawlessly. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Wolfenstein, it's okay, but I think Dishonored is still the gold standard.
Yeah, Dishonored is definitely the gold standard. There's just something special about how the folks at Arcane handle stealth mechanics. We're going to go, because I don't want to go into story spoilers, because once again, the game's only a week old.
Yeah, we're going to try and stay away from that stuff if possible.
But I really, really want to talk about Anna.
Right.
Because never have I found, with the exception of maybe Elizabeth in BioShock Infinite,
mm-hmm.
have I found a tag-along partner that was intuitive to the gameplay and also very intuitive to how you consume the story.
Mm-hmm.
And how quickly, after only playing 3 to 4 hours, I've quickly become very attached to her. What are your general thought process on Anna as a character? Did they develop her well? Is it something that progresses well through the game? Does it get better from the start to the finish?
Again, staying away from spoilers. I'm trying to be really careful and dance around some stuff here. I think Anna's character is one of the strongest points of the story. The fact that they flesh out this dynamic between her and Artyom, because they're married now. Sorry, that's not a spoiler. That's premise of the game. Sorry, okay? Is that they are married now. They're a young couple together. And so them and their journey and why they're journeying on the Aurora with the other Spartans is a big deal. It's one of, if not the most important thing about the story that keeps you moving forward. And again, it's in those quiet moments that the story really develops without having to say anything. And that's the hallmark of a good story, is when character development progresses when absolutely nothing is being said. It's in those tender moments of just caressing each other on the train that are actually handled really well and not in an objectifying way or anything like that. Or going out on a sniper mission, or just talking, conversing over breakfast. Like, these small things really reinforce their relationship and their dynamic, and they add up into some very interesting things that I won't spoil towards the end of the game.
So it is very safe to say that 4A Games has done a very great job of crafting character stories and making it feel natural.
Yes, they are easily my favorite video game couple since Anya and BJ Blazkowicz.
I was actually just going to bring that up because that was the comparison a lot of people were making.
Yeah, and not exactly the same. Artyom and BJ are very different characters, obviously, but in terms of how the dynamic and the relationship progresses, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. There was just something like when you interact with her and how she interacts with you. It just felt natural. Like, you know how in some gameplays where like some game scenarios, you feel like a relationship is forced. The
Yes.
developers want you to like this character, and you're like, oh, I
Very much
guess.
so. I'm not afraid of doing a call out here. I'm sorry, but Liara in Mass Effect, and Mass Effect is one of my favorite game series, like ever. It's
I'm
still up
looking at
there.
you, Sam, Uncharted 4. I'm looking at you.
That's not as bad as Liara, in my opinion. But the point is, like, yes, sometimes it feels like the developers are going, look at me, look at me, look at me. And like, I'd be lying if I said that's not what they're doing here. You are highly encouraged, at sometimes basically forced to interact with her, but it's done in a natural, slow way. And the tone is completely different, and it's really well done.
And I've been very adamant because there was drama surrounding this game, but that had nothing to do with character choices or anything to do with the game at all. Had to do with publishing deals and Epic Game Store exclusivity, as everybody knows. But there was no outcry because there was a main character that was female or any of this hubbub that we get whenever games seem to come out with female side characters or anything else. This just feels natural. And I think a lot of developers can learn from that, is that if you use natural storytelling to make people enjoy a character and the character doesn't feel forced, there's a lot to take in from that. My one main complaint, and I want you to talk a little bit more about it because I know we're of the same wavelength on this, is the disappointment of the fact that there is a voice actor for Artyom, because you hear him in between sections and everything else and in previous games, but he has no character dialogue.
This is probably my one real big complaint for the game, but unfortunately, it is a major one in terms of in the past, I was willing to give them, a sort of side benefit of the doubt, like, okay, you're a smaller team, these are smaller games, they're sort of AAA on a AA budget, right? If we're being honest here, and it was like Artyom only narrates the diaries and the intro, maybe the outros as well for the game. Sure, I get it. You're supposed to put yourself in his shoes, but the thing is, he's a much more developed character here. He's sort of in this awkward in between zone where it's like they want you to put yourself in Artyom's shoes, but they also want him to be his own unique defined character. And I'll be honest, I would have been totally okay with like a Dishonored to Dishonored 2 style leap. You know what I mean? The fact that Corvo isn't voiced in Dishonored 1, but he's completely voiced in Dishonored 2. Like, don't be afraid of that. I'd be okay with that. I'd be totally okay with Artyom talking, and it would have aided what is already a great story, what's already an incredible relationship dynamic. That only would have been strengthened. But instead, you got these sections where people are talking at Artyom rather than talking with him. And it's just kind of weird because it's like, I don't care how shy or quiet you are. You would say something. Like, I would have something to say about this. I would react. And so it's definitely a disappointment in that aspect.
Yeah, for sure. And especially in an environment where we have games like Wolfenstein, where Machine Games took a character that literally had absolutely no voice acting or characteristics or even a personality per se from previous titles, and completely create a complete and utterly complex character with probably some of the best voice acting we've seen. And from Artyom's journals, the voice actor's really good. And I would have loved to have seen that progress. And that's my main complaint, and why I think is a general rule of thumb, is that silent protagonists is holding back the FPS genre, so to speak.
The only way you can get away, if you don't mind me interrupting, the only way you can get away with doing a silent protagonist now is if you do it like old Fallout New Vegas style, or Fallout 3 or Dragon Age Origins, where you're still selecting a text box. It's implied your character has said something. I think we can still get away with that. I think there's still room for that in the industry, but the totally silent protagonist, completely never saying anything, those days are over.
Yeah, see, the thing is like there's some games that can still get away with it. Obviously, like I don't ever expect Doom Guy to have a voice.
There's the exception. Yeah, there's
Because like we don't
that.
even have a name for him. We just call him Doom Guy for God's sakes. Uh, like there's a game that you talk about character progress and character development. I'm angry. I smash things. I kill demons. Okay.
Yeah, but okay, Doom is a very, very specific example.
Of course. And my biggest complaint, and I remember, I think it was Paul Tassi wrote the article. I'm hoping it was him because I don't want to cite someone else's article, but wrote about how disappointing Far Cry 5 was because it was one of the major Far Cry 5 games that really could have benefited from having a voiced character instead of just this guy who doesn't say anything hurled into all these insane situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think if 4A Games continues the Metro series, then they definitely need to step it up in terms of that specific aspect of the game. Especially when they did such a great job hashing out Anna, but not necessarily stretching out Artyom, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we covered the stealth mechanics, covered the gunplay, we covered what we could of the story. Want to talk about enemy variant?
Okay.
Range of mutants. Are you happy with the range of mutants? Do you think there could have been more?
I think the range of enemies is fine. It's not bad to the point where it's like, okay, come on, give me some variety. It definitely could have used one or two more, in my opinion, but I don't think that's enough to detract because it's like you've got the series staples. Metro veterans will know what I'm talking about. Newbies will just have to wait to be horrified. A lot of the standby veteran mutants are here. There's a couple of new ones as well that are introduced. So I think it's fine. I think it's totally fine. It's just when you think you're getting tired of seeing a particular kind of creature, there's usually a new one just a little bit further away. Not too many. Could have used one or two more, but it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination.
All right, makes sense. Now you're going to cover a lot of this stuff in your review, of course, more in depth and whatnot. Audio design.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that can be really make or break for some games. I know you already cited that the guns sound great and everything else. How's the general sound design in terms of quality and soundtrack? So
I think the soundtrack is fantastic. The soundtrack is easily the best of the series by far. The past two Metro games had good music, but they only had two or three tracks that I could really pick out and say, okay, yes, that's absolutely, I'd recognize that. That's from Metro. This one has several tracks that I could say, yes, I remember that. That's from Metro Exodus. So that was really a big plus. Whether it's the somber moods, the more quiet tunes for moments on the train or after a big discovery, or it's just the frenetic, oh my lord, there's a horde of mutants barreling down on me, help me, these crazies are going to kill me, I need to fight them off right now. Like, the soundtrack fits very well, and there's also a neat little audio cue if you're about to be discovered, that it gives you fair warning. Hey, someone is about to see you. This is the last second you have to duck for cover, and that's a really neat thing as well.
Yeah, for sure. And something I just want to say, because it's amazing in the Metro series, the whole gas mask system that they use whether you're wiping it or changing filters, or the fact you have a watch that keeps a timer for you to change your filters. Really, really, the immersion in these games is fantastic. And the immersion in Metro Exodus specifically is astounding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that the gas mask system is relatively unchanged. I don't really go over that much in the review because it's like it works the same way it did in the past ones. The only difference is that you can now craft filters because you're not buying them with military grade rounds anymore. You can craft them in the field. But that's the only real difference. Other than that, it's the same great system used in Last Light.
Okay. Weapon variety. Thoughts on the variety of weapons, crafting them, etc.
All the weapons from the prior games are here, but here's the difference. The catch is now, if you want, you can completely customize everything about a gun without having to go to a blacksmith and pay for it. You don't have, or gunsmith, I suppose, technically. You don't have to hoard up all your money and say, okay, gunsmith, I want this, this, and this, and then pray you made the right decision and you don't find a better gun. This time around, it's so nice because you find a gun of a particular type. It's like, huh, I want that. You swap it out. It's okay. You still have the other gun. As long as you discover a gun type, it'll be there in your inventory at the train, at your Spartan Ranger gunsmith, the Spartan who handles the guns for you. Like, yep, I want this one. I want this one. It's okay. So any new gun type you find, you automatically have that unlocked moving forward, and you can strip enemy guns down for parts. So it's like, this is a new barrel. That's a new scope. Cool. Take that. Take that. Now I can use this. That stock, I already have that stock, so I'll just get some metallic components. And there's two main resources, chemicals and components, that are used to make everything. So there's always a reason to loot enemies' bodies and strip enemy guns down. Always do it. Make sure you're doing it for each and every one compulsively if you can. And it's so cool because in the past games, like I said, you had to hope that you made the right decision in terms of customization or pray that something better dropped out in the field. Here, it's like, okay, I just got through using this shotgun to kill these guys, but now I'm trekking across the desert and it's more long range. Let me take out my revolver. Not that much, it's just a revolver, but I can add a 4x scope, a long barrel, a wireframe stock. I've just turned my revolver into an impromptu sniper rifle. And that's just the most limited of the customizations. You can completely change things up. There's rifles, shotguns, a submachine gun. There's even a Gatling that you can unlock and find and haul around if you are so inclined. So the gun customization in Variety is superb.
That's great to hear. And having two key crafting components is great because I find some games overcomplicate their crafting system. It's like, oh, I need 7 different components to make this gun. I need screws, I need bolts, I need duct tape, I need glue, this is not a Fallout reference. It's too much because you're like, oh, what was that component I needed to pick up? And then you're sitting there scratching your head trying to remember the component was, and you realize that you missed it 6 bodies ago.
I know what you're talking about.
It's very frustrating. Having two, if you can make a skill-based crafting system, being able to balance it so you can use it on the fly, but still requires you to use some thought process, that takes a lot of talent to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really glad to hear that. The one thing I always tend to ask, especially with games, especially from going from a linear game to a more hub world game, did you experience any bugs, technical issues, or anything like that?
Okay, here's the thing. I didn't have any bugs or glitches or frame rate drops, anything like that. The game did crash on me once. It did crash on me, but just the once, and that was across about 25 hours of playing. So I'm willing to let that one slide. However, I do, and I put this disclaimer in the review, I have heard from a couple of my friends who are playing the game that they've encountered far more crashes than me. So I'm not sure if it's platform specific. I'm not sure what's triggering it. You definitely need to be aware of that. Like, some people are having more crashes than others. However, 4A Games is on top of it. They've already put out a patch for the PC version that went live earlier today. They're working on a patch for the console versions sometime next week. That'll be out. So, buyer beware. Be aware of that if you go get it right now. But they're working on a fix that's going to be out in a few days.
That's great to hear. I know a lot of reviewers had issues, especially in terms of load times, but a lot of that was fixed in terms of the day one patch.
Yeah. And the initial load time, when you're first booting up the game, can definitely take a good minute, but it's just that initial time when you first load it up. And then after that, it's perfectly fine. So again, that doesn't bother me too much.
For sure. It's great to hear the game performs well. It's done a lot of different things well, and just in terms of general quality, it's great to see this game getting the reception it did.
Yes, please support this game.
Of course, I think physical sales were up something like 70 to 80% in the UK, which is saying something because UK gamers do not buy physical copies of games.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, that is just one market, and, again, it's the UK physical market, but it is really nice to note all the same.
I will be very excited come MPD time to see where it tracks.
Same for sure.
And I'm really hopeful for 4A games because they put a lot of hard work into this game. So if there's any questions in the chat, you've already been answering them. Perfect. All right. We're on the ball. If anyone has any more questions for Sam, plug them into the chat now. If not, we will be sliding out of here.
Yep. And if you are listening to this later, drop a question in the form of a comment on the video, and we'll get to it in one of our Gaming Perspective episodes. Or you can just hit me up on Twitter, and I'll answer
seriously,
there.
just at Sam and ask about video games. He'll talk about games endlessly, as will I. So if there's no more questions, we'll wrap this up here. Keep in mind, you can find Sam's review for Metro Exodus tomorrow morning.
Yes, that will be out at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, EST.
All right, so 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can check out Sam's review for Metro Exodus and get all your good, detailed information. Trying to think if there's anything else. No, that should be about it. Gaming Perspective podcast tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be a good episode. Got some good stuff to talk about. So I want to thank you guys for coming by and hear us chat about Metro Exodus. If you'd like to hear us talk about more games, leave a comment, leave a like. If you have game suggestions, you can hit me up just at me at Undead3XVI or at Samuel Tolbert. Because I love talking about games. My DMs are closed again if I'm not following you. So if you do have a game you want us to talk about, just at me on Twitter and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So thank you guys for tuning in to one of the first episodes of Let's Talk Games. And I want to thank Sam for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I am glad. Look, you give me an excuse to talk about games like Metro. I'm going to happily talk about games like Metro, okay?
Don't you worry. I'm going to be beating Prey in the next week or two, and we are going to be talking about Prey.
Prey, Metro, basically just great first-person games. Because dang it, people need to play these great first-person games.
Damn it, buy the good ones. Stop buying
Exactly.
Call of Duty. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. You guys can catch us tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Jared and Mr. Eric Jackson. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys tomorrow night.